myself, but I'm not getting off of it. I'm floating out there by myself. Everybody is so excited about being 3-0 and the wins and breaking the stupid Ravens streak. That was the kick-cots of the preseason. Such a dumb decision. I'm alone.
Pop's alone in the raft. And let me tell you what. We don't swim well. What's going on, man?
Son, we're ready for real football now.
Finally. I mean, I know you were like hanging on to the edge of your seat last night watching Jake Fromm cling on to that lead. I think we caught it from the Ravens now. We're a little addicted to these preseason victories.
I'm going to get into my Jake Fromm love a little later.
Oh, goodness.
But, hey, can I interject something?
Please.
A moment of silence. Put your hand up on the screen. Put your hand up on the screen for Terry McLaurin's big toe. Okay. Please, Lord.
Jesus. Allah, Jewish God, Tom Cruise. We need you all on a collaborative effort on this year. We'll get into that later.
All right, we'll get into that later too.
But plenty of preseason stuff to talk about here today. This is kind of like the wrap-up pod, I think, for the off-season, the preseason, how we're feeling going into the regular season. Stay tuned. Lots of good stuff here. So just
there's going to be a little bit of a rant at the end. So stick around, people. Little rant at the end.
Pop's going to bring some heat. Stick around. Let's get right into it. I think let's just do like quick impressions from what we've seen from the preseason, our reactions, our quick thoughts. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give one positive impression, one concern that I have, and I'm going to kick it over to you. You do the same thing. Maybe that way it helps us stay a little more structured here. So positive impression for me from the preseason, I think Bieniemy's impact on this offense is real. I think it is legit. I think I've been complaining about the second he who must not be named, Scott Turner. I've been complaining about him for years and years and years. And I think we're really seeing the delta of what a modern NFL offense can start to look like. And I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. Because if you look at what Kansas City did in the red zone last year, we didn't see a lot of that from us. I think a lot of those plays where we just go to a quick slant or like 3 yards in a cloud of dust to Brian Robinson up the middle, I think we're going to see those plays turn into some of the more Bieniemy signature stuff. In general, guys are running wide open, in space, all over the field. Great spacing, nice spread. I love what I'm seeing out of the Bieniemy offense.
What makes that exciting, if I could just make a point on that.
Please.
We're seeing the vanilla version of the Bieniemy offense.
Exactly, the tip of the iceberg.
Look, there's only so much you can get. And again, a lot of what we have to go through his vibes. But the vibe I get of him calling the plays, the rhythm that he's in, and even his connection with Ron Rivera. I hope Ron doesn't interject too much in the offense, but they seem to have a good vibe going together despite the roughness that happened a couple of weeks ago. But very encouraging. Like I said, this is the vanilla version. That's the exciting part.
Yeah, and even just the little things that we see, you can see he is totally gearing this to Sam Howell and to making things easier on Sam Howell. You'll see the running back we'll be in an empty set, and then the running back pulls into the backfield. That's a quick man zone check. So just these little routine things that Howell can see and understand, it's brilliant. Defensively is obviously my biggest concern. Slow starts from the defense whenever we have seen the first team. That's kind of a Del Rio thing in the preseason. He doesn't really like to give much away.
Not worried at all about the defense.
I got to pick a concern.
Not worried at all.
That's going to be my concern. Pop.
You're worried about the defense more than the O-line?
Yeah, right now I am. Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But from what I've seen in the preseason, I'm concerned about the slow start from the defense. What do you think?
Son, all I know is we're 3-0. We're on a heater. We got the crowd doing the wave. We got Josh Harris doing interviews in the booth and on the sideline. We're rid of Dan Snyder. the schedule prediction pod, which is going to be the next one. Who knows where we're going to end up and all
17
that.
and 0.
The vibes are high. We're 3-0, baby. We're going after the Ravens record. We broke their streak. It's all good. It's all good. Looking good in the preseason. I mean, you got Jake Fromm. Sam Howell, who? We got Jake Fromm just throwing dimes out there. It's all good with the Commanders. Let's talk a little bit about this roster.
Oh, geez.
I'm excited.
Let's get into the roster. I want to clarify. I had to pick a concern. So the concern is the slow start of the defense, but overall, I'm very excited about the team. Don't really have any legitimate doubts about the defense.
The offensive line is the most obvious concern. That and health, which we'll get into a little bit later as well.
100%.
There's some guys with some nicks that are concerning, right? You got Chase Young.
Definitely.
You got Terry McLaurin. You got Thomas. There's some nicks out there. But Jonathan Allen dealing with plantar fasciitis. If I'm nervous about something, the most that I'm nervous about, and John, and then Ron's selectiveness and who he sits and who he doesn't. Later, hold that thought.
But roster discussion. I say we get into that. It's a little bit of it's that time of the year, position battles. I think it's important to remember as we're talking about this, these guys are people, right? This is their careers. This is their livelihoods. This is their lifelong dream. Everything about them, even just their identity as a person, has revolved around doing this. So
yeah, so be nice to Dax Milne, Dominic. Be nice to him.
Well, I was going to say he's the exception.
Practice what you preach.
I'm just kidding. But before we get into it, obviously we're going to give our takes, but it's nothing personal ever. It's purely, with as much respect as we can have when we discuss.
All right.
That's how we're getting.
Enough of the niceties.
Trying to do the.
And we're not going through each position. We're just talking about some of the highlights.
Yeah.
Of the the key areas, and as we get into our preseason awards, we'll dive a little deeper in some other stuff, but just some of the top position battles that we see.
So I think right now the two most interesting things we're going to shake out is the offensive line, and not necessarily the structure of the offensive line, like who the starters are going to be. I think that's pretty clear at this point, but where the decisions are going to be made in terms of depth. Are we going to keep 4 guards? Are we going to keep 4 tackles? That kind of thing. Wide receivers is also interesting. Running backs, I think, is pretty much hammered out, but again, towards the bottom of that depth chart gets a little bit interesting. Defensive line is where things start to get pretty funky. I think we have an overload of talent there, which is great. Let's go ahead and start off with the offensive line, I think. Start off with the big fellas. So, obviously, I think our starters at this point, from left to right, going to be Charles Leno, Sadiq Charles, Nick Gates, Sam Cosmi, Andrew Wiley. I think that's pretty clear. Sadiq Charles has been impressive in the small sample sizes we've seen him. Health is a concern there. Sam Cosmi made a good transition from tackle over to guard. Wiley and Leno, both pretty durable veterans, middle-of-the-road guys, not going to wow you, but going to give you NFL performances week in and week out, you hope.
The closest battle there appears to be Charles and Paul, over that left guard spot. There's even talk of possibly a rotation. I don't love that, to be honest.
That's
kind of messes with the vibe. But that's, closest battle there. But it's good that there is some depth available there, which, I think we're starting to see a little bit more encouragement in terms of that offensive line depth. At least
and something to keep in mind, too, a lot of new guys. And in terms of chemistry, when you talk about the offensive line, there's a lot of the whole has to be greater than the sum of its parts. There's a lot of unspoken, understanding, I'm going to let this guy go. You take this guy. He needs help on a double when this guy comes this way. Whatever. Very technical terms I'm using here. So these guys are finally starting to get used to each other. New offensive line coach, which I think is important for a lot of the guys that have stayed around, because a lot of these guys are staying around from the last system. So new things. We've seen a lot of growth there. Something I'm concerned about, which I think is a pretty universal concept at this point, is the tackle situation. Charles Leno, Andrew Wiley, both known to be pretty durable guys. I think that's why they're there. But Cornelius Lucas, above average backup at the tackle position. And then what? And then
Yeah, no,
what? And
I mean
that's what
it's trouble.
starts to
I
worry me,
think.
right?
Yeah, I think there's depth beyond Lucas. I agree with you. I think Lucas is if you took Leno, Lucas, and Wiley, I don't know there's a much of a drop off with Cornelius Lucas, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think that's also a problem that your backup is pretty equivalent to your starters there. So, you just hope that those guys are solid. That's probably the ceiling for these guys is to be solid, be pros. And, hopefully I think with Wiley being a Super Bowl winner as he gets settled in and working. And I think we're picking on probably magnifying the bad plays that we're seeing. A
Yeah.
lot of time an offensive lineman, they don't get noticed is when they're making good stuff. But I'm starting to kind of really like that depth in the interior.
Yeah.
If you look at center with Larson as a backup, who's a solid backup, and Nick Gates will get into in our wars seems to be a beast, right? And then you talked about the guards and how about Ricky Stromberg coming on strong. So one of our draft picks, not the one we thought it might be, but one of our draft picks coming on strong. But I agree, concerns at that tackle depth.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing about Ricky Stromberg coming on strong is that he has shown his ability to play guard, which is going to allow us, hopefully, to keep Tyler Larson around, who I think is a legit NFL starter. I think he's a good player. It's
Agree.
just health is a concern with Larson, right? So if we can
But
keep
every
Larson
time he was
around,
in there last season, I mean, look at his win-loss record last season when he was in there. He was a difference maker, and nobody really talks about him too much. He could
yeah,
play some guard too.
yep. If we
So
needed him to. So that's what's intriguing. Something to also monitor there on the tackle situation. Sam Cosmi obviously could kick out the tackle if he needed to. He played a couple seasons at
absolutely,
tackle if it
that's a
comes
good
down
call.
to it. But you got to look at guys like Mason Brooks, Brandon Daniels, both kind of in the projects, not really there
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
Let's move on. Wide
But I think
receivers,
generally, would you agree you're feeling a little better about the offensive line, just a little bit,
yes, a hundred
just a little
percent.
bit? All right,
A
I
hundred
agree.
percent. Feeling much better about the line. We'll see how that pans out as the season goes forward. Wide receivers, McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, De'Ami Brown, locks. De'Ami Brown showed a lot this year. He's changed almost a full 180 as a player. I'm starting to really like him. Now we've got on the edge, Pringle, Dax Milne, Kazmir Allen, Mitchell Tinsley. Um, Mitchell
I
Tinsley
think
showed a
Pringle's
lot
probably
with
pretty
the
locked in as
backups.
well.
I would say I think Pringle's a lock as well.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. I think he's the best player out of that group. And now we
Let's
get
get
into
into
this
this Dax
weird.
Mill Casimir Allen debate because I think you and I are on different sides of this argument. I'm going to surprise you with this one. But
So I will be fully transparent here. I did not watch that third preseason game. I was out at the driving range. Balls were jumping off the club. I was feeling great. I said, you know what? Get another bucket. We're going to ride this one out. But I got caught up. I looked back at the key moments in the plays, the highlights, stuff like that. And the worst one was the Kaz Allen muffin that punt inside the 10. You're like, oh, God.
I mean,
Because
the
up
young man
until that
has
point,
a tough time. You're going to keep him as your roster as a receiver, and he has a tough time catching the ball. He's got drops in practice and drops in games too.
up until that
Like
point, he had steady hands when it came to returning. And he was showing a dynamic ability in space to actually create something off the return.
practice squad.
Not looking good for him here. I'm very interested to see what happens between him and Dax Milne because, yes, Dax Milne knows how to catch the ball when it's coming to him in a punt. And that's about it. That's where it ends with Dax Milne. He
I
doesn't
mean,
return it.
no question about it. But at this point, what do you value more, right? You're excited about your offense and your weapons, right? You cannot turn the ball over. You cannot risk it. You cannot risk putting somebody out there that is susceptible to fumbles. He's got to prove it more. Practice squad him. I hate to say it as much as you do. Go with Milne. I think Tinsley's a practice squad guy too. Undrafted free agent. But
Yeah.
I hate to say it, I think it has to be Dax Milne because he's solid. And, he started to make a little bit more progress on his returns as he got more comfortable. But we just can't have somebody back there fumbling the ball.
Yeah. I've got more to say about the return situation later on in the pod, but yeah,
Okay.
I agree with you. It's just tough. I just really hate to see Dax Milne back there.
I hear you, but it's the smart decision at this point.
We'll
Turn
leave
it
it
over
at.
to your offense. Turn it over to Eric B and those weapons. Just secure that
I
ball.
agree. And as
Has to
Commanders
be.
fans, you got to remember last season how how much did we capitalize with having a really good special teams unit and forcing some muff punts? We won at least one, maybe two games off of picking up muff punts and getting quick goal to goal situations. So, Commanders fans, we should understand how important it is that you secure that catch. Let's hit the running backs. We got Brian Robinson, definitely going to be your starter there. Antonio Gibson, change of pace guy, probably closer to a 60-40 split there would be my guess. Chris Rodriguez came on
Lock.
hot. Came
Yeah,
on hot.
lock.
Talk more about that later.
So quick,
Jonathan
I think,
Williams.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I think quick here, just to keep it quick, right? I think it's just Williams and Patterson are guys you really like.
Yeah.
But are they going to get that roster spot or not? Does Patterson spend another year on the practice squad? It's a really shame, especially with Jared Patterson. Maybe it's a little bit of aspirin serum, but he just seems like he's a guy that belongs on a roster. He just balls
Yeah.
every time he gets the chance, right?
You love the guy, you love the story, you love the heart. But I think that's a pretty safe practice squad bet at this point, would be my guess.
And I like having Jonathan Williams on the team too. I think he's produced every time he's gotten a chance. So like the running
Agree.
back depth, other than I think we've only really got one third down pack, which maybe scares you a little bit.
We got
The
two.
depth in terms of runners, who else?
Curtis Samuel.
Okay.
We got two.
Okay.
We
All
got two.
right. That's fair. I like it.
But at least that's my guess. That's how they're seeing it. That would be my guess. Because otherwise, why don't you go get Jet McKinnon? But that would be my guess. But anyways, let's move on to the defensive line. I think you're right. Running back room we can get through pretty quick. We know it's going to be a lot of number 8 and number 24 this year in the running back room. Defensive line: Sweat, Allen, Young, Payne, Phil Mathis, John Ridgeway, all definitely locks. Really like John Ridgeway. Let me just say that.
Yeah,
Good pickup
absolutely.
last year. Smith Williams, a guy that I really like, maybe on the bubble, but I think he's kind of like the Byron Pringle of this group. I think he's probably pretty solid. Andre Jones, the surprise of camp, 7th rounder, ballin', looks great. Casey Toohill and KJ Henry, he's a 5th rounder. It's kind of hard to call him the disappointment of camp, but maybe the disappointment of camp definitely didn't show up, hasn't delivered what we need there. So we're in this weird situation now where, like, you can't keep all of them. And you have Andre Jones, who was
Maybe you
drafted.
can. That's
Maybe you
10.
can. It's tough,
That's 10.
though. You have Andre Jones, who was drafted in the 7th round. You have KJ Henry, who was drafted in the 5th round. Andre Jones playing more like a 3rd rounder, and
Andre
KJ
Jones has
Henry
made the team.
KJ Henry playing more like a 7th rounder or an undrafted free agent. We're in but Ron likes to keep his draft picks in the building. Do you have a lean on what happens there? Is Casey Toohill the sacrificial lamb here, Pop? What are you feeling?
I think they're all going to make it. I think they're going to
Interesting.
keep Henry. Henry is the one that's on the bubble. Toohill's just
Yeah.
too solid as a backup. You can't get rid of him. You're not going to get rid of Smith Williams. They've produced. It's KJ Henry on the bubble. The question is, do you think you could sneak him onto the practice squad? I don't know. I think they end up just figuring out a way to keep all 10 of those guys. They're not going to keep a bunch of linebackers, so maybe they
Yeah.
could afford to keep an extra lineman. I think that's what ends up happening there. But I think Andre Jones is the great news. KJ Henry, I'm never going to fault the guy. He's a 5th rounder, first year. It takes guys some time. But to see that flash from a 7th rounder and Andre Jones is so encouraging. So I'm going
Yeah.
to give KJ Henry some time to develop still. I was high on him coming into camp. But awesome that Andre Jones is performing the way he's performing.
And if you want to continue to get psyched about our backups, don't forget we got the boy F.A. Obata. He just doesn't count towards this roster thing because of the international program that the NFL has. So we don't have to worry about that.
So FA's there. FA's there as well, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then, but I believe, like I said, I believe it's through the NFL international player program or something like that where he doesn't count. That's at least happened in the past. So I'm assuming that's the situation this year. Otherwise, he'd be a lock. I think he's probably even above Smith Williams. Let's get into the preseason sauce awards. What do you say? Let's start giving out some
Let's
awards,
do
and
it.
then I know you got a little bit to say as well. So we're gonna go kind of quick through these awards here. We gave a good recap on the position battles, get back into some of the stuff we said we were going to get back into. Sauce Award, we can make this one brief because every podcast has been about this guy for the last 6 months. Sam Howell.
Sam
Easy
Howell.
pick,
Slinging
universal pick,
Sammy Howell.
slinging Sammy Howell. The dude did it. We're so excited. Let's see what the season brings. We
It's
are
so exciting. We've talked
pumped.
so much about Sam, but it's so exciting that he has separated himself in earning the job. You watch one thing about watching that last preseason game is you see Jacoby starting, you see Jake Fromm playing pretty well,
Yeah.
um, but you could clearly see the difference between those guys and Sammy Howell, and that's just so encouraging that he's not only won the job, he's run away with the job,
Yeah.
and it's incredibly encouraging. Still a young guy, you said it, only 22. Lots to be excited about with Sam Howell.
Yeah, just huge night and day difference from the way we were watching the preseason games these last 2 years to now in the quarterback situation. Just
Sauce,
awesome. Thoughts
preseason
for Sam Howell?
MVP. He
100%.
was cooking.
Let's turn that into regular season MVP here. So
Absolutely.
for the helmet stickers, I'm gonna go through these pretty quick. We're gonna touch
Sure.
on a couple. I think some of these are more obvious than others because we've already talked about them quite a bit. Jahan Dotson, Cole Turner, Nick Gates, Chris Rodriguez, Andre Jones, and Emmanuel Forbes. And then we're going to do some honorable mentions here. It's got to be Jake Fromm. This one's for Pop. I don't really, it's Thurston quarterback, but this one's for Pop. Jake Fromm, Quan Martin, and I wanted to throw in Sam Cosmi there, making that transition from tackle to guard, solidifying up the offensive line.
There's another honorable mention. I'll get into that at the end, though.
There we go. Obviously, Jahan is Jahan, dog. Cole Turner showing
Yeah,
some
it just looks
blocking,
great.
looks good. Nick Gates, I think, is in terms from a leadership aspect and just his hustle and his play, he's been great. I think he is the reason this offensive line is starting to shape up and turn around, and the reason I have optimism. I think he's kind of like adopted that the enemy mindset of playing really hard. Maybe that's just who he is. But love Nick Gates, really excited about him. Chris Rodriguez averaging 7 yards a carry. Awesome.
Baller.
Great to see. Really, really great to see there. Hopefully he gets some actual on-field action. We already touched on the Andre Jones situation. Manuel Forbes had a couple flash plays. Didn't see a ton from him, but we look forward to seeing him develop over the course of the year. Pop, do you want to do a little bit of Jake Fromm talk, or are you
No, I think
kind of
before we
leveled
get to
out on that
Jake
now?
Fromm, I'm just having a
Go
little
ahead.
fun with Jake Fromm. Although I am encouraged by how he looks, and I think we got an interesting roster decision there. I know some people are saying we could stash him on the practice squad.
That's
I'm not
practice
so
squad.
sure. I'm not so sure he wouldn't get. Maybe not in week one, but at some point, I think he's if a quarterback goes down, he's a guy that's going to draw some interest in the league. I'd like to see a way we could sneak him on the roster because I think if what happens is what we think what happens going forward, which is Sam solidifies himself in the job, Jacoby's probably not coming back. And we need a
Yeah.
backup. And I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing from Jake Fromm in terms of being that future backup guy and being a solid number two. And I don't think he's
Maybe.
number one by any chance. So I give honor much to Jake Fromm. Of these guys that we gave helmet stickers to, of course, Jahan is Jahan. Everyone thinks he's going to be a superstar. I'm right there with you. I like the picks overall, but Cole Turner has been impressive. He's a guy is put knocking on the door to be our number one tight end. And maybe the more impressive things, there's a lot of things that impress me about this kid. His size. He was a wide receiver turned into a tight end. He catches everything that's thrown to him. He's catching everything that's thrown to him. And there's a lot of contested situations, right? But he's also, we've said about him, not a blocker. Check the tape. He's been blocking. He's been
Yeah,
putting the effort in, and
and
he's been
blocking
shown the
well.
desire to be a good blocker. If I'm Thomas, I'm getting on the field because this kid's knocking on the door to be tight end one.
Yeah.
He really is. Been really impressive.
And that's when we talk about the Bieniemy impact, we think X's and O's a lot of times. And even at the beginning of the pod, I was talking about formations and blah, blah, blah. But that's also the Bieniemy impact. Guys are not allowed to get
No
away
question.
with not blocking
Tight end
anymore.
friendly
Guys
offense.
like De'Ami Brown running crisp routes, not allowed to get away with rounding off routes anymore. Just all the little things you're
Absolutely.
starting to see. And you wonder, why was that tolerated under previous regimes? But whatever, we're moving on.
Coach Bieniemy's got to get a helmet sticker. I think we got to throw one in there for
I
Coach
think
B.
Coach B, we could go Sauce Award, frankly. I think Coach B and Josh Harris, I think we could go honorary off the field Sauce Award. I think
All
that's
right.
I
I
think
like
that's
it.
fair
Josh
to say.
Harris, we touched on him earlier. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
He's definitely getting a helmet sticker in the mail, without a doubt.
Enough positivity. I'm gonna
Major
give a
Tutty
90
helmet sticker.
enough positivity. I'm giving a 90-second kick-out, and then I'm going to hand this thing over to Pop because he has been brewing. Do you have something you want to get in there first, or
I
what?
thought you were only giving me 90 seconds. I was like,
No,
what's up with that?
I'm
I've
giving
been
a
brewing
90
all
second
week.
kickouts, and I know you're ready to go off here. So those of you who've been with us, you're about to be rewarded. My 90-second kickout has got to be the return man situation right now. I can't believe we're having a pick between Dax Milne, who can't run, and Casimir Allen, who can't catch, and we've got the only duties for the position is to catch and run. I can't believe it. There have to be better athletes, better NFL return men that we can have on the roster. Oh, wait, we had one 2 years ago and we refused to pay him $1 million. We paid Carson Wentz
Yeah.
like 28. Ridiculous. DeAndre Carter should be on this roster. He should be our wide receiver 5 and our dedicated return man. Maybe he didn't want to stay around. I think we didn't want to pay him. It's just ridiculous. I'm not going to let that one go until we get a good returner. Pop, take it
Be
away. Your kickouts is probably much more important.
I had to wait. I had to wet the pipe. So Dominic and I have been going at this all week. We didn't do a post game Ravens pod for scheduling reasons, and so this is the first chance we get to talk about that. I think the fact that Terry McLaurin was still in that game for that last drive of the Ravens. And by the way, I have a witness, our Ravens insider. I was screaming at the TV, why are the starters still in? The fact that he got injured on that last drive, and I said it, I was texting you, timestamp, somebody's going to get hurt. We're going to lose a starter here. It made no sense. And look, I'm old school, right? I'm a big fan of B. Mitch's. I'm a big fan of Doc Walters. Don't talk to me about these players being soft and they need to play. What are you going to see out of Terry McLaurin at that point that you don't already know? And if you say you want him in the game to help Sam Howell, what are you going to see out of Sam Howell at that point that you haven't already seen and you aren't already convinced about? And doing a 2-minute drill against a third string defense means nothing. It means nothing. You can go live and practice under controlled environment against your ones and 2-minute drill yourself to death. It was irresponsible. And look, I just want to say something, right? Much respect to Ron Rivera. I know we give him a hard time. We talk about his decision making. He has been the best possible coach. The fact that he's been able to keep this team glued together the last 3-4 seasons, I believe almost any other coach would have been 4 and 12, 4 and whatever it is these days. I'm fired up. 4 and 15. He has done an amazing job keeping this
19
team
game
in
season.
contention and around and potentially having a really good season. But that is just so tone deaf to the situation. And you know what? People say, oh, we've got great receiver depth. Bull crap. I mean, you lose Terry McLaurin, that just puts that much pressure on somebody like Jahan and Curtis. And do you really want Diami being a starter? It was so dumb. And you know what? If EB had a part in that and wanted to keep the starters in at that point, that was dumb too. It's completely situationally unaware. And if you're doing it to try to break the Ravens streak, that is the dumbest reason of them all. Irresponsible. I'm pissed that Terry is hurt because they left him in the game. I was okay up to that point, but why the starters were still in at that point in the second half. And then, one last point, it's selective. Look at how many starters we sat. And if you're sitting all these other guys, not all of them were nicked. Not all of them were hurt, right? Some of them just got the day off. And arguably your most valuable guy on the team is still in the game at the end of the first half. Makes no sense. I'm pissed about it, as you can tell.
I can tell. I'm a little more
Nobody
measured
can
on
tell.
it.
Nobody can convince me otherwise. Everyone's got a right to their opinion. Hit me in the comments. No reason that man should have still been in the game. No reason Sam Howell should have still been in the game at that point.
I wholeheartedly disagree with. I think you have a young quarterback, you give him an opportunity to practice a 2-minute situation in game, you practice it. That's it. Terry,
this is me dropping the pen. I said everything I had to say about it.
There you go. Terry, I actually said it early in the first quarter. I think when he made like his first catch, I was like, why is Terry in the game? Why is he playing today? I don't know I would have played Terry at all. I agree with you. He should have maybe come out for that 2-minute drill. I understand the thinking. I don't disagree with it. The result is disappointing, and I think it's a very hindsight is 2020 situation where it's like it's easy to be worried about it in the moment, and then it happens, and then you look back and you go, how stupid was that? But it's a freak play. These things happen. Jerry Jeudy was carted off the practice field a day later. Joe Burrow strains his calf in a non-contact
But
drill.
I just want to be clear.
It's a contact sport, man. It happens.
I was pissed when I saw them on the field. I was upset the entire time, even as they were driving down the field before anybody got hurt. I kept screaming at the TV, somebody's going to get injured, right? Here's the problem. It's just not situationally aware. The offense was moving the ball. The offense was playing well. They just went through 2 days of joint practices, which was much better work than playing against the Ravens' second or third stringers. It's like this, no ability to adapt. We're playing starters the first half, the whole first half. We're just playing them the whole first half, no matter what. Had they struggled the whole first half and you wanted to get one more drive in to build some confidence with Sam as that last drive of him playing, I can live with that. But that's not what happened in that game. There's no ability to adapt and understand and put our best player in bubble wrap and say, he did enough, he's done. And you know what? Okay, if you're going to argue with me and say, you want Sam to run a 2-minute drill, let him run it with the backups as practice for a situation where you might get your best guy hurt, which is what you did.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. And I think that's an easy compromise I think you can reach out here is maybe you take out Terry and Jahan and you let Sam run the 2-minute drill without those guys. Maybe you don't need them out there. What we did see, which I think was a positive thing, in the very small sample size of Jahan having to be the number one receiver, he was incredibly effective. And he was the backbone of that drive. And then you saw De'Ami Brown go up, make that touchdown catch, which if you watch the tape on that, he was not open. That was Sam knowing his guy, putting the ball where only he could get it, and being confident in that my boy De'Ami is going to get the catch. And he did it.
Against second and third stringers.
I'm not going to let you say that Sam Howell driving the ball down the field with 1:40 left in the game and scoring a touchdown is not an exciting thing.
It wasn't worth the risk.
It was great.
It wasn't worth the risk.
We're going to have to agree to disagree unless we want to do a 2-hour pod here. It's a shame. It's a shame what happened. Obviously, thankfully, not to be that guy, I don't want to underestimate an opponent. You got to imagine.
Oh, don't say it. Don't say it. Because here's the thing. I know where you're going. All right, we got to play the Cardinals. We could beat the Cardinals without Terry. What if we lose that game? Think about that for a second. What if we lose that game? And one of the reasons is because our best player wasn't there. That's a disaster to start the season. Absolute disaster. So no one, please tell me it isn't a big deal if Terry isn't available game one. It's a big freaking deal.
Long season, 17
He's going to play. He's going to play because he's tough, but he's going to play hurt. And that sucks.
I don't want him playing hurt, and that's
He's
maybe a
gonna
different
play.
conversation. That's maybe something we can get into in our pregame pod for Arizona once we have a little more clarity about the situation. At the end of the day, he's got, from the time the injury happened, now 2 weeks, he's got 3 weeks to the start of the season. Hopefully he can get healthy. Little guy named Justin Jefferson had the same injury last year, and he seemed to do pretty okay. Right?
I'm alone in this raft
we hope
in the ocean by myself, but I'm not getting off of it. I'm floating out there by myself. Everybody is so excited about being 3-0 and the wins and breaking the stupid Ravens streak. That was the kick cots of the preseason. Such a dumb decision. I'm alone.
Pop's alone in the raft. And let me tell you what. We don't swim well as a family, as a unit.
That's it.
So Pop being willing to be alone on that raft and stay on the raft.
We're not buoyant people.
I'm on the boat reaching out like this, trying to get him up, right? Him willing to be alone on that raft shows how dire he feels about this situation. So I think we wrap this thing up right here. There's no better way to end the episode.
Get that off my chest. It's been brewing all week. Therapy. Let me know if you disagree in the comments. It's whatever.
Had to let Pop go. Let us know, for our longtime listeners. Compare this to the Jack Del Rio rant that Pop let off. What do you think? Where do you think we compare this for the longtime listeners, those that are still here? Guys,
I don't rant that much.
He doesn't.
You rant more than me.
But when he does, he brings it. When he does, he brings the heat. You can't deny that. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Let's wrap this thing up. Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.